In this video you will learn the basics of OPUS TOUCH user management. User management is an integral part of OPUS TOUCH. It allows you to precisely define what individual users or user groups are allowed to do and what they are not. Touch uses the same user database as OPUS, but offers more granular control over individual settings. There are three pre-configured user groups: Administrator, Lab Manager and Operator. Each of these groups has a corresponding default user: Admin, Lab Manager and Operator. In Touch, the settings of these predefined groups are write protected, as they are also used in OPUS, where such fine-tuning is not possible. For compatibility reasons, any user who is not assigned to one of these groups will automatically be added to the Operator group when logging into standard OPUS. Please note that the settings shown in this video reflect the default configuration of the Data Integrity Mode installation for validated systems. These settings are generally stricter, particularly regarding password security and user permissions. In Data Integrity Mode, administrator users typically do not have permission to measure or evaluate spectra. Their role is mainly focused on user and system management. In contrast, in Standard Mode, administrators generally have full access rights. In both modes, the Lab Manager can perform most tasks except user management, while operators are mostly responsible for measuring and evaluating spectra. Now let's switch to the practical side. First, we need to open the user management section within the OPUS TOUCH settings. Make sure to log in as a user with user management rights, for instance the pre-configured admin user. From the home screen there are two ways to access it. First, by clicking the gear icon in the upper right corner, or second, by clicking the user icon in the upper left corner. Since the second option takes you directly to the User Management tab, I will use that one. Once there, you will find three subcategories: Users, Groups and Global Options. We'll start by looking at the global options. At the top, there's a prominent button that allows you to configure Active Directory. When this feature is enabled, only users who are part of the Active Directory can log into Touch using their standard Windows credentials. The main advantage is that all passwords and password policies are managed centrally via the Active Directory server rather than within OPUS TOUCH itself. We have a separate tutorial that covers this topic in detail. If Touch is not connected to an Active Directory server, it allows you to define a comprehensive set of password rules regarding password complexity. The first field allows you to define the minimum length of user IDs when creating new users. The following setting specifies the maximum number of failed login attempts. If a user exceeds this limit consecutively, Touch will automatically block the account. The next two settings relate to password expiration. You can either enable the switch to allow passwords that never expire, or you can define a password validity period in days. After this period, users will be required to set a new password. The setting Number of passwords recorded by OPUS prevents users from cycling through a small set of previously used passwords. A previously used password can only be reused after a defined number of password changes have occurred. The final settings all relate to password complexity. Higher values enforce stronger and more secure passwords. Once everything is configured correctly, click Done to save your changes. To discard all modifications and revert to the previous settings, select Undo Changes. Next, we'll take a look at user groups and users. But first, some general theoretical information. A user can belong to one or more user groups. All permissions defined at the group level are inherited by the users assigned to that group. However, any permissions explicitly set at the user level will override the group settings. Both at the user and group level, each permission can have one of these three states: unset, The permission is neither explicitly granted nor denied. If a permission is set to unset at the group level, touch will fall back to the user level setting. Conversely, if it's unset at the user level, the group level setting will apply. If a permission is unset at both levels, the user will not have that permission. Set, the permission is explicitly granted. Settings defined at the user level override those at the group level. So if a permission is granted at the user level but denied at the group level, the user will still have that permission. Prohibit, the permission is explicitly denied. Again, user level settings take precedence over group level settings. If a permission is denied at the user level but granted at the group level, the user will not have that permission. Now let's take a look at the group settings. On the left side you can see the list of existing user groups. You have the option to delete a user group with the exception of pre-configured groups. You can also add a new group. On the right side you can edit the permissions of each group, as long as it's not a pre-configured one, and assign a specific home screen to that group. Most of the individual permissions are self-explanatory. For more detailed information, please refer to the user manual. The user management view looks very similar. As you can see, there are additional functions such as editing an existing user or changing a user's password. Please note that even the pre-configured users can be edited. Let's now take a look at the settings for the Lab Manager user. On the first tab you can edit the user's basic information. If a user is required to provide an electronic signature, make sure to enter a last name. This is mandatory for signature functionality. You can also force a user to change the password or lock an account. On the User Rights and Groups tab, you can assign the user to one or more user groups and adjust the individual permissions. It is also possible to define a specific home screen at the user level. The Signature tab allows you to define electronic signatures for the user. Simply enter a meaning in the corresponding text field and the signature becomes active. Once all changes are made, confirm by clicking Done. Please note that when in data integrity mode, a file needs two different signatures in order to be fully signed. First one of the review category and then one of the category release or release and lock. Now you know the basics of user rights management in OPUS TOUCH.